This is the news Suns fans have been waiting for. Are the Suns contenders or pretenders in the eyes of sports betting bookmakers? I've taken a look at some of the Suns' best odds according to one of the most popular sports books that are available in Arizona, and we're going to break that all down for you guys right here today on Suns Digest. My name is CJ Pierre. Thanks for joining us today. We are going to take a look at these Suns betting odds as we move into training camp and into the start of preseason ahead of the upcoming season. Now that the Olympics are done with, free agency is basically done and over with. Teams have their roster set. So we're going to look and see how the bookmakers, the guys who are putting out all the odds, think the Suns are going to stack up. But before we get into that, we noticed that about 82% of you guys are watching our videos, and we appreciate that, but you haven't subscribed to the channel just yet. If you want to make sure you're keeping up to date with all of the latest Phoenix Suns news and updates, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing that we are going to have rolling for you guys. So let's get right into it. And let's start off right at the top, right at the most important thing, the Phoenix Suns NBA title odds. Where do the odds makers, the bookmakers, think that the Suns stack up in terms of winning a championship this year? We know that GM James Jones, owner Matt Ishbia, new head coach Mike Budenholzer, it's a win now season. It is championship or bust for the Phoenix Suns. That is the expectation when you have the big three of Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal, and you make the moves that they made in the offseason. Now, yes, they didn't make anything splashy. They didn't do anything too huge. They signed guys on veteran minimum deals, but the additions that they made and not making any huge trades in terms of some of their pieces, like Yusuf Nurkic, that tells me that they are all in on the Suns as a championship team. So that's what the owner thinks. That's what the GM thinks. That's what the head coach most likely thinks, and probably the players and fans. But the guys in Vegas, the guys who are making these odds and making all that money, what do they think? Well, let's take a look at some of these odds. This coming from FanDuel Sportsbook, one of the most popular sportsbook in the United States. And the Phoenix Suns are ranked ninth in terms of the odds to win the NBA championship. Leading the pack is the reigning champions, the Boston Celtics, followed by the number one overall seed from the Western Conference last season, the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Denver Nuggets, who were the previous champions, then the Philadelphia 76ers and New York Knicks, all the Denver Nuggets all tied together in that third spot. 76ers making a huge addition in Paul George, the New York Knicks, kind of the up and coming team in the Eastern Conference. And then there's the Western Conference, representing the Western Conference champions last season, the Dallas Mavericks, the Minnesota Timberwolves, who made that big leap last season. Then there's the Milwaukee Bucks, can't forget about them, Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard. And then kind of more so falling off, there are the Phoenix Suns with the odds of plus 2,400. For those of you maybe not as familiar with betting, those odds would stack up as if you bet $100, that would be the number that you get. So if you bet on the Phoenix Suns to win an NBA championship on FanDuel Sportsbook right now, and they ended up going on and doing it, you would get back $2,400. That's how those numbers work. And those odds obviously will change over the course of the season. They'll be updated, if there are injuries, depending on once the season goes on. Obviously, those odds can change. But the Phoenix Suns kind of slotted in there in the ninth spot, and it's a kind of a distant ninth spot. The way that I view that is that FanDuel Sportsbook doesn't necessarily view the Suns as on the same level as some of these other teams. Even the odds difference between the Milwaukee Bucks and the New York Knicks, like the Milwaukee Bucks can easily be in the Eastern Conference Finals, and so them being at that far behind where the Knicks are, not necessarily a big deal. The big thing is that the Suns are the fourth or the fifth team listed from the Western Conference. And when you have Oklahoma City Thunder, the Dallas Mavericks, the Denver Nuggets, and the Minnesota Timberwolves, they're kind of viewed as the teams that are really in contention in the West. And we can even dive further into that if we just take a look at the odds to win the Western Conference. And it's basically the same there. The Suns slotted in that fifth spot behind the Thunder, Mavericks, Nuggets, and Timberwolves, with the Lakers being in that six spots in terms of chances to win the Western Conference. So the odds makers look at the Suns as a good team, as a solid team. But the fact that the odds for the Thunder and the Timberwolves is about 200, and then there's a huge gap and fall off from where the Phoenix Suns, that tells me that FanDuel doesn't think that the Suns are on the same level as those other four teams who are projected to be in the top fighting for home court advantage in the Western Conference. Probably that number one seed. Obviously, Oklahoma City Thunder were the number one seed last year, and the Denver Nuggets and Minnesota Timberwolves were basically a game out from that spot and were the 2 and 3 seeds. The Dallas Mavericks were the number 5 seed, but they made it all the way to the NBA Finals last season. Plus the addition of Klay Thompson, they're going to be a tough out as well. And basically, it looks like the Suns are not going to be looked at on par with those other teams. Now, I think that says a lot. I think that kind of obviously contradicts what uh, GM James Jones, owner Matt Ishbia believe about this team that and believe that this team can be a title contender. And I actually would tend to agree with the owner and GM. I think the Suns team can be a contender and compete with those top four teams in the Western Conference. Now, it's not going to be easy. Those four teams, the Nuggets, the Timberwolves, Thunder, and Mavericks, they're all going to be tough outs. They're all really good teams. Even the Lakers, to some extent, they're going to steal some wins from a bunch of teams. But I think the Suns, as currently constructed, are going to be able to compete with them. I think these odds are basically based on the fact that we haven't seen exactly what they're going to look like. And also, when you come off of the embarrassing first round sweep that the Suns had last year, that's kind of hard to really put a lot of expectation into, but that doesn't really factor in new head coach Mike Budenholzer and what he's going to bring to the table, what kind of new offense he's going to allow to run and to put guys like Durant, Beal, and Booker in better positions. Doesn't necessarily account for the addition of Tyus Jones at point guard and what his role will be with this team and how effective he will be in terms of what it allows the team to become. I think you minimal additions like Monte Morris and Mason Plumlee, obviously they're big. They're going to help for the Suns depth wise, and that's why I am a believer in them and being able to compete with some of these other teams who are also very deep. The Thunder are very deep. The Timberwolves are very deep. But I think that when you look at just what FanDuel is looking at, they're looking at the current roster makeup, the fact that the big three were there last year and got swept, and they're back again. Not necessarily really a lot of wholesale changes. Everything was very minor, and you can't really factor in exactly how much a new head coach is going to change wins and losses. Also, the Suns won a lot of games last year, even with former head coach Frank Vogel, because the West is so stacked with so many good teams that it's kind of really hard to tell like where you're going to place in a particular conference when that conference is loaded with so many good teams. Now, the sportsbook, FanDuel Sportsbook, definitely still high on the Suns in terms of them being a team that's going to make the playoffs and be one of the final 8 teams. It's a little bit closer than maybe I would have it. It's more than 50-50. It's probably based on this, it's probably more like 65 to it's more like 65, but I think it's 65% yes that they would make the playoffs. But I think it's still a little bit more certain. I think the Suns are almost a lock to, at the very least, make the playoffs in the Western Conference. As far as the win total, basically around the same as they were last year. That's where FanDuel has the Phoenix Suns with the over under at 47.5 wins. Now, that is about a 50-50. If according to FanDuel, it can go either way. I do think the Suns will flirt with 50 wins this season. It won't be easy, but I think it's definitely feasible and possible. A couple other sports betting notes that we probably want to take a look at here in this video of Suns Digest is Suns prop betting. Prop betting is basically things that you do, things that can happen over the course of a season or in a game. We can maybe get into game betting props a little bit closer to the start of the season, but in terms of long term prop betting, that's when you bet on things like awards and things that players can achieve. And the biggest one in the NBA, obviously, is the MVP award. And there are two Suns guys that will likely be in contention for the regular season MVP. Most notably, according to FanDuel, the best Suns player that has a chance to win the MVP is Kevin Durant. Now, he is way down the list, near the bottom there, with plus 6,000 odds. Again, that meaning if you bet $100 on Kevin Durant to win MVP, and he does right now, you would win $6,000 in return. Kevin Durant trailing guys like Luka Doncic, who is the favorite, Nikola Jokic, the reigning MVP, and then guys like SGA, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Anthony Edwards is up there, Jalen Brunson up there, Victor Wembanyama, the rookie sensation from a season ago. A little surprised to see John Morant so high on the list. If he was able to come back from injury, that would be interesting. And then Steph Curry, who obviously coming off of his dominant performance in the late rounds of the Olympic tournament, is also up there as well. So we saw KD. Uh, question his word, does Devin Booker fall in there? He's not too far behind Kevin Durant. He's about three slots behind Durant at plus 10,000. Devin Booker right behind Tyrese Halliburton and Zion Williamson, followed by Donovan Mitchell, Kawhi Leonard, Anthony Davis, and LeBron James. Now, again, these are things that will definitely change over the course of the season. This is obviously, we haven't even started training camp, no preseason games. This is all just more so based on vibes, narrative. Luka Doncic just carrying his team to the NBA Finals. So is a likely favorite. He has won the MVP before. Some guys who have won MVP in the past kind of get docked because voters don't necessarily love rewarding guys with multiple MVPs necessarily, unless it's there's given a good reason to, which is why Jokic has won multiple. But right now, Kevin Durant, who is also a former MVP winner, and then Devin Booker, they're kind of lower on the list. I think you have a good chance if the Suns end up becoming the number one seed, that someone on that team will win MVP award. And I think that there's a chance that actually could be Devin Booker. I think Booker is lined up for a breakout season this year. I think Suns fans should be excited with what he is going to do, how he's going to come off of playing in the Olympics. And I think Devin Booker is going to be really locked in to make sure that he is a key cog in why the Phoenix Suns have a good season this year. So I think he's actually a decent bet to win MVP. Obviously, Kevin Durant, one of the best players in the world, isn't a bad bet either. There's a low risk, high reward aspect currently with where their odds are in terms of winning the MVP award. One last thing, just an interesting thing just to note along, the NBA Cup, the NBA's in-season tournament also being announced. The Phoenix Suns also a little further down the list in terms of teams expected to win the NBA Cup. They're also the fifth team out of the West. Obviously, that's not necessarily inclusive of the NBA Cup. Is not You're not necessarily matched up with teams from your conference per se. You're matched up with teams in a particular group that's in your conference, and then you move on from there. The Phoenix Suns with plus 1,900 odds to win the NBA's in-season current tournament, now dubbed the NBA Cup. So just a little bit of sports betting knowledge to pass along to you, Suns fans, as you get excited for the upcoming season. Sports betting is starting to ramp up a little bit with the start of football season, and then that parlays right into NBA season. So there's a little bit of sports betting excitement. I like to dive in that in some upcoming videos. And if you guys have any other ideas that you wanted to pass along, feel free to do that as well. I appreciate the time, you guys. Really appreciate all the support that you guys have given us since we started this channel. If you want to make sure you're keeping up to date with all of the latest Suns news and updates, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. Again, that's all the time I got for you guys. This has been Suns Digest. My name is CJ Pierre. I appreciate you once again, and we'll catch you next time. So go, Phoenix Suns.